Hi everyone, my name is Anton Mikhailov. I'm with the Modeler team, and this is First Takes from the community. So we've got David here to explain his workflow with Substance 3D Modeler. So
yeah,
over to
thanks,
you.
Anton. My name is David Mellor. I am a senior motion designer at Wieden+Kennedy, and for the past 10 years I've used a variety of 3D tools for my workflow, and only recently I discovered Substance 3D Modeler, and I've had a blast with it, and now I'm going to do a breakdown during this time to show you how I created one of my earlier pieces.
And I'll keep an eye out for questions and interject whenever someone's interested.
So this is a piece that I made earlier this year when I was really starting to find my stride with Modeler. It's called Gardener, and there are a few pieces on here where I've got these wisps that kind of flow around the body. I've got all these little plants that are growing out of it. There's some symmetrical elements, so I'm going to open that file up and give a breakdown of how I built each of those parts, and then with the remaining time that we have, I'm going to build live a miniature takedown version of this. So I'll crack that file open right now.
And Modeler 1.0 just released for those who haven't heard, so this is our brand new launch.
Yes, exciting. All right, there it is. What up, what up? It's the gardener. So I'm just gonna throw the headset on and just chat with you, answer questions from the community, and just have a fun time.
Yeah, so one of the neat things about Modeler is that it runs both on the desktop and in VR, and you have the same interface in both places. So you can get started in desktop and then jump into VR, and you'll basally know how to use the tool, or vice versa.
I need to play it safe first. I got to put these wrist straps on.
Oh yeah, put a wrist strap.
Safety first, folks.
I'll move your cursor out of the way.
Oh yeah, thank you.
We've really tried to make the UI accessible for people, so if you're starting in 3D, we use a lot of the same metaphors as Photoshop and Illustrator, so rather than sort of being totally new vocabulary, I think you'll feel quite at home.
Yeah. So Anton, where should we start with this character?
Well, maybe just tell us a bit about the different tools you used in the different parts of it.
So since it's right in our faces first, I can just go ahead and start with these wisps. So these wisps were using the... Oh, you know what? I think it's freezing a little bit.
Is it batteries issues?
No, it's not letting me scope in.
Oh.
Oh, is it doing something else?
Are the buttons just not working?
Yeah, these buttons are just, you can see that the tool things.
Oh.
Maybe we should restart this.
Yeah, maybe just do a quick jiggle the handle.
Yeah. We're doing it live.
Doing it live.
All right. Let me try choosing a different brush.
Seems to be working here, right?
Yeah, it was working a few minutes ago. It's because it's camera shy, that's why.
VR is a new medium, folks.
Yep. There we go. Now we got some buttons. All right. Whoa, gosh. I'm sorry for anyone who is getting dizzy over this. I'll try to be as still as possible. Okay, so we've got this wisp-like object in front of you. I'll set this aside and I'll give a quick breakdown on how I do that. So for this, what I like to start out with is I'll use the clay tool, and I'll use usually the swept sphere. So it's just like a connected line that goes all the way across. And I'll add some pressure. And all I'm doing for this is I'm just kind of drawing out this very loose, kind of curling, wispy pattern. And I'll make sure that the resolution is low enough for smoothing so I can get a nice smooth shape like this. So that's looking good. I'll go in here
Okay.
And I'll smooth that out. So it's creating that nice shape. And then from there, I will use one of my favorite tools, which is the elastic warp tool. So this is going to give some nice elasticity, some nice flow to it. It's going to feel a lot more organic as I'm transforming this object around. And I'll show you a quick difference between the regular warp and the elastic warp tool. So with the regular warp, if you have your cursor here and you move it around, it's only going to stay within that area. It's not going to inherit some of the rest of the geometry around it. With the elastic warp, I can get much more natural tension points happening. It's feeling a lot smoother, more organic, and it just generally gives a better shape for stuff like this. So I can grab this and I'll kind of curl it up. And the cool thing too is you can use the joystick to scale that, and it'll have a nice transition as well. So I'll just move this up, and then I'll grab this middle section and I'll curl it in, and I'll make a bigger selection right here, curl this in as well.
So cool. I didn't realize that was just a couple of elastic warps.
Yeah. The cool thing that I've discovered with Modeler and just VR modeling in general is that when you are like even 3D sculpting on a desktop, you're still restricted to your screen. Like when you want to pull around a shape or something, you can only go across the axis of your screen. You can only go this way and this way. But with this, I can grab this section, I can grab this section, I can pull it out, I can twist it this way, do whatever I want, and I can be morphing the shape around in ways that I couldn't in a normal 2D program. 2D, 3D program, I guess.
Especially for these strokes that go all around the character, that kind of stuff is, really difficult in traditional 3D, where you have to, go around, you have to establish multiple spline points, and you can do it, but you lose a lot of that artist touch and your freeform hand, and I think we really try to bring back your personal style into it, not just sort of let you do it.
Yeah, that's also just the beauty of this digital clay, this volumetric modeling that you have going in here. It's the way I like to describe it is if you're like a kid or even an adult, like you're drawing on a big piece of paper, or some restaurants they have like the big parchment papers that you can draw on instead of an actual tablecloth.
Right.
It's like that, but you have this infinite space. You can scale as big or as small as you want to, and just you can build your own world inside this, and they just continue to make all the time. It's really liberating. It's fun, and for like techniques that I'm going to be showing, you generally can work a lot faster in here.
Yeah, we really try to make it feel like Photoshop in 3D or Illustrator in 3D, where it, rather than teaching complex 3D metaphors, it's just like your brushes. It's just instead of doing it in 2D with a stylus, you can now do it in 3D with a 3D controller. So it's very natural to sort of imagine how in the same way, you get the jump from using a mouse to a stylus, in terms of freedom and speed. I think it's that same jump going into 3D when you switch from a stylus to a 3D controller, because now you're able to do these sweeping motions directly,
exactly,
as opposed to with knobs and curves and things.
Let's do the plants next. There's a lot of plants on here, and it looks like I made all these plants individually. That's totally not the case. There's a much easier way to do that, and it's with a feature that Model has called linking. And if you're familiar with other 3D programs, this is the same as instancing. So I'm essentially creating one object, and everywhere you see where there's a little green outline, that object is connected or linked to these other objects. So I can just create copies of this object, and if I were to go into one and let's say I'll use that elastic tool and make this little leaf kind of turned up, it's going to apply that to all the other objects. So super cool. It's one of my favorite tools to use in this program. There's even ways where you can create links, and then you can put those links in groups and make those groups links. So you can just have links on links on links.
That's right.
And build these really complex pieces with just a couple parts.
Yeah.
Perfect example is, I'll do a quick rundown of how I made this flower right here. So the flower, before I do that, I'm going to move this whole guy out of the way.
Quick question earlier about materials as well. Like speaking about that wisp, they were asking if the translucent glass material if those stay in Modeler, that was from Ken Wilson, and I think the materials right now are pretty basic in Modeler.
The materials are basic, yeah.
But when you bring it out to Stager or another app to render it, that's where really the materials that you saw in the screenshot come to life.
Exactly, yeah. So for that, I'll bring that into another program to render. Typically, I will take the vertex color data that I'm able to make in here, translate that over to the 3D program of my choice, Stager or otherwise, and just change the translucency there. Yeah. And you know, sometimes I'll have to do a little bit of shifting around to make it look compositionally nice. So with the flower, what I did was I started with this this ovoid, this nice egg shape here. And
while you work on the flower, I'll just answer a question about 3D printing. Someone's asked about exporting to STL or STP. We currently have OBJ and USD and FBX export, but we're working on STL as well. And all of the model meshes are watertight, so they're ready to 3D print sort of out the gate. So you don't have to worry about topology or any of that stuff. You know, once we have that export that you need, it should just be a straight shot to the printers. A lot of people in our community do prints already.
So there's a couple nifty repetition tools in here. So what I did for the flower was I used this radial repetition, and that created instances or links basically, but in a radial pattern. So now I can just go in here and I can modify one of these objects, and I can use that elastic tool to kind of push up and create more of a curved, flat pedal shape. And then, you know, get a little fancy with it, kind of add a nice upturn there.
I think that's the fastest pedal I've seen. Everyone's got different techniques, but I think this is the...
Oh, yeah. I mean, when I was doing a demonstration yesterday, I discovered this really cool way to make stylized hair really quickly. I'm just going to show you now, because I was super excited about learning it. Yeah. I took a cube and I stretched it out. By the way, it's important to make sounds while you do this. It's all part of it'll make your models look better.
Right.
So I did that, and then I did that, so just kind of had them overlapping. So you have this nice kind of pattern happening, this hair grain happening. And then I grabbed the elastic tool, and I just pinched it down tilting down the joystick. And then I did that over here.
That's cool.
And then it's a little high in resolution, so I'll turn that down a notch. And then smooth it out. So you got these nice softer edges, and then you know, you can style it up into a mohawk. So I just grab this, I can turn this up.
That's so cool.
And then I can, you know, create a link of this and just go boom, boom, boom.
Oh my god. Yeah, there you go.
And now you've got that very cartoony hair texture.
Yeah, that's so cool.
Yeah.
I think that's like my favorite part about, you know, watching artists work in Modeler, and it's actually core to our design philosophy that we want the techniques to be kind of front and center, rather than saying, oh, we've got this hair tool, you can set the cross section, and so it's much more enjoyable, I think, for artists to discover and share these techniques that are just come from the basic primitives that we lay out. So a huge part of the Modeler tools is the community sharing techniques, and we want it to stay that feeling like you're using a pencil. You know, you don't have a bunch of knobs on your pencil, you just learn to use the pencil. And in
different ways. You can use the tip of it, or you can kind of turn it on its side to get a broader stroke.
Yeah, so we want to carry that philosophy through the tools, and that's what lets us keep the UI simple and uncluttered.
That's awesome.
Someone's asking also, Duff Wegman is asking the difference between modeling on desktop and VR, and if the desktop tools may be a little bit more limited. The tools are actually identical on desktop and VR, like the tool set, and even the UI is identical. It's just what happens is in VR you have the ability to move things in a freeform fashion, so that's missing in desktop. But the way you move things in desktop is using the traditional 3D gizmo, so you've got like arrows that just move the stuff up and down.
Yeah.
So that takes the role of having a full 3D hand. Instead you manipulate like a 3D cursor. So For things that are mechanical, hard surface, that's actually quite nice because most of those things are orthogonally aligned, and it's quite easy to use the gizmo. When you get to more organic stuff on desktop, it's hard to do this kind of 3D sweeping strokes, but you can still work on the surface of the sculpt. So it's just it's not that the tools are more limited, it's just that the workflow is fundamentally more two-dimensional, or at least piecewise three-dimensional. But the tools that are available are identical in both cases. It's just for more organic freeform stuff.
I want to keep hitting this desk. So yeah, I'll just show really quickly how I can swap this new flower that I just created with the old flower in here. One great feature that is in Modeler is a thing called scoping, which pretty much gets rid of the more traditional way of going through menus and selecting your layers. All I have to do is hold up on the joystick. I can point to anywhere on the object if it's like a separate object, let go, and now it's going to scope in to the object. So right now I have all this group together. I'll go into this flower, and now it's got that isolated. I can pick that up and move it around. And so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to scope out by just pulling back on the joystick, grab my flower, and while I'm holding it with the right trigger, I can go into that flower and set that in there. And
now it appears everywhere.
Now I delete that. And everywhere that there was a flower, the front and the back, is going to have that new flower. So we're essentially rebuilding this on the fly. But after I go over the rest of these techniques that I did, we'll make a brand new one.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Scoping is interesting because it's very new to the 3D workflow. Not a lot of tools I've seen have it. But actually people that are familiar with Illustrator would be totally familiar with it because that's essentially the isolate concept.
Oh yeah, you're right, it is.
It's the same thing, just sort of rebranded.
Yeah.
And you can, in the desktop mode, just like in Illustrator, you can double click to isolate just like you would in Illustrator. So it's a great way of dealing with a hierarchy directly in the viewport.
Yeah.
Because, as you can see in this model, there's already dozens of layers. And once you start to get into more complex works with hundreds or even thousands of layers, because Modeler can support quite a lot of geometry.
It does, yeah.
It just becomes impractical to scroll a list. So it's just so much easier to move it directly. And it just keeps your attention in the viewport and with your art rather than in a list diving somewhere.
So I've kind of gone over the more organic aspects of this character. I'm going to talk a little bit more about how I got these more geometric and symmetrical aspects of the model, and we'll do that by just giving this character a new set of glasses. So starting inside here, I will turn on my grid so I can snap to the object, and if I zoom into here, now that I'm in this section, it's got the grid aligning to when I created this object, not when I sent it over there. And what I'll do is I will start placing down using all the objects at my disposal in here. Oh, it's on paint. Whoa.
Whoa.
So I'll start with a torus. And anytime you can actually use this cursor to turn around the brush cursor, and so it's good for kind of getting in areas that you wouldn't want to contort your whole body to do, so it's a nice little...
Yeah, it's like changing the grip on your pencil.
Exactly, yeah. It's a nice little assist. I want this to be hollow like this, and what I could do is I could kind of freeform modify it like this, but sometimes I can't get it perfectly right. Except for that, I guess. What I can do instead is I can toggle the gizmo, and now I can grab these little dots right here, and I can scale manually like that. I can use the right cursor, joystick to go up and down and get that looking just right.
And that's the same gizmo you'd get on desktop if you're operating with a mouse.
Yeah.
So it's actually pretty handy to have it in VR as well for precision work, and that sort of just shows the dual nature of it, like the VR benefits desktop and vice versa.
I mean, even in desktop mode, it's just kind of fun to just slap the keyboard to drop some clay down.
We tried to make it as tactile as we could.
Yeah, I dig that.
Boom,
Yeah. So we've got this right here, but we want to mirror it over, so we'll use some symmetry. And then because this is using the gizmo, I can use the stamp on the back to apply that clay. And then we can start using the grid to build out other parts of this object. So let's do let's do a couple little hills going across to make this shape. You can also use these little gadgets gizmos to rotate around, and if I want to go back to free transform mode, I can totally do that too. So I can turn that off, and now it's just aligning to where I have my cursor. So I'll add a little bit of thickness. There we go. Shrink that down. Actually, let's give him some funny eyebrows. There we go. And then we'll add some. For the rest of this part, I want to just turn off the grid, so I'll do that. I'll just add some big kind of wing-like structures.
There's another question from Delph around Windows 11. Yeah, it's compatible with Windows 11 currently.
Yeah, this is on Windows 11.
Oh, it's running on Windows.
Yeah. So we got this. I can go in and I want to get rid of some of these little seams here, so I can just use that smooth tool and blend all those shapes in real nice.
Nice.
It's okay if these blend in a little bit.
Now it's physically plausible.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. These could be 3D printed.
Right.
So we'll grab this and we'll kind of add a little to it. And then we can go in here and just erase.
Thanks for all the positive feedback as well. The chat's blowing up with like.
Oh, that's so
awesome job,
nice.
Dave. So I forgot to tell you that everyone thinks you're doing great.
Yeah, what the heck, dude? Just sitting here feeling like I'm making a fool
I
out
thought
of
you
myself.
might get like a little lazy, you know.
Lazy. Not on Adobe Next. Okay. Oh, this is all together, that's why. Oh, well now it's all blended in.
Happy accidents.
Oh, that's kind of looking like a certain logo. We'll keep it like that.
Shout out.
There we go, yeah. Okay. Well, I mean, should we just start making a new character?
Yeah, let's do it. Let's
All
see
right.
what we can do. We've got
All right.
a bit of time remaining.
Oh yeah, we got about 20 minutes. All right.
20 minutes, new character, no big deal.
Get out of here. You stay.
Yeah.
Here, we'll set them this way so they can watch. Yeah. Okay. So let's do a small version. Let's start with just a sphere, and we'll drop that in. Let's change the color. You can just hover over this little part right here to change the color. Drag around. There's a nice little eyedropper, so you can pick colors from that if you want to. So start here. Plop it down. So we got that. And I want to add a little opening at the top. Like so. So I'm just using simple shapes just to add and subtract geometry, just to build those basic forms. Kind of like you would if you were an illustrator, and you would start by blocking out your basic shapes, and then you start refining and filling in those blanks. A lot of the stuff that I do, I treat Modeler like a 3D illustration tool, if that makes sense.
Yeah, totally.
Like I look at it through an illustrator's lens, so a lot of this stuff is very freeform, very gestural, but then I also try to add like that 3D depth geometry. Yeah.
I think that's cool because, from what I've seen in 3D, a lot of people's perception is that it's frankly quite stiff.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you have to deal with a lot of technical numeric input, dragging things on grids and stuff, and I think a lot of that free-form hand gestural feeling is lost. So we're trying to bring that back with modelers so that, you can do illustrations in 3D, but make it feel just like you might do it in Illustrator or Photoshop. Have that artistic thumbprint that I feel like gets lost if the process is too technical, if you know what I mean. Like it's almost like it's been machined. So we have a lot of people
That's where the whole "this looks like CG" thing kind of comes from.
Yeah, and the typical thing in CG is you draw a sketch on paper, and then you bring that in as reference art, and then you start modeling it. But now we're seeing, because Modeler is so freeform and gestural, people are starting to start their sketches directly in 3D, and that affects their perception of the work as well. So it's like you could see, you can see angles that you didn't expect, and that kind of keys you into a playful mindset. So I think it's bang on. I think a lot of people that are familiar with 2D illustration will be at home here because the metaphors are so similar, trying to keep that language consistent.
So one thing I didn't mention with the leaves before, because I think before I was just using the egg shape to create those leaves, there's another way with this super nifty spline brush tool. So this is the basic shape it starts out in, but I can hold down the tune button and I can stretch it out, I can manipulate it however I want, I can change the profile with the left joystick, give it these cool sort of shapes, and then for like this guy, let's give him some big chunky hands. I'll go here.
That's cool.
And then let's give him some big fingers. Actually, let's make a little like indent for the palm here. And like that. And it'll smooth it out. And then modify that. And just
What would you say are the main strengths of the VR workflow versus the desktop workflow? It's a question by Sam Peterson.
I don't have to worry about moving a camera around.
Yeah.
My head is the camera, so I can be very precise about where I want to look in my model, or even like grab parts of my model. That's the big strength for me, and it's why I tend to find myself working quicker in here, because I'm not worried about the more like process part of like creating a 3D model. I'm just like building the 3D model with my hands and using these gesture commands and not worried about anything else.
Yeah, more of the UI gets out of your way, I guess.
Exactly,
You're less engaged with the UI bits and more with your work.
Let's give him a little thumb. There we go.
And Van Fisher also asked if you'd recommend using a tablet for desktop mode. I think for that, so we support both tablet and mouse, and I think just like with VR, it's like you have advantages in VR for freeform organics. On the desktop, if you're doing surfacing work, especially like engraving or embossing or any kind of lettering on the surface, I think that's where the tablet is really handy, because it's literally like writing. But then if you're doing more architectural or hard surface work and you're just sort of like making precise orthogonal adjustments, then I think the mouse is really nice for that precision. So I think it's not so much one's better than the other, but it's really just, we designed it so that you can pick up any of these things and just switch your workflow to kind of have the best experience. So that's why VR, you just jump in and you're going. It's not separate apps. So I think just use whatever feels comfortable for you for a particular moment.
So just kind of taking little design cues from that. The character over there.
That's cool.
So give him some blue eyes.
Have you had any motion sickness? Probably asks.
Not really, actually. I was worried about having motion sickness. Oh, hold on.
Get the emergency.
Of all the times. No, I haven't really experienced motion sickness. If I feel like exhausted, I'll just kind of sit down and it can still work just fine. I'm also not going like super crazy and going too all over the place.
Yeah, we the modeler team actually has a lot of seasoned VR developers. So I used to work on PlayStation VR. We have the lead guy from Tilt Brush. We have people from Dreams, from Medium, Maquette. So there's a lot of VR expertise on the team, and a lot of us have worked with the headset manufacturers to reduce any kind of motion sickness. So if you haven't tried VR recently, it's really worth trying it again. The earlier headsets did have some sickness problems, frankly, but none of the newer headsets that are, like Oculus Quest or any of the other high-end headsets, I haven't had any issues with sickness. And also, nobody's moving you inside these spaces. It's totally just your head's motion and just your artwork. So it's not like a roller coaster. It's like it's just looking at something in front of you. So it's just not a very intense experience.
I will say, when I've played other games where it is actually physically moving your body.
Yeah, that's the worst.
That's when I'll start to feel a little like I don't want to do this right now.
So we don't do any of that.
Yeah. But something like this has been super chill.
Miranda also asks about how your eyes feel after working in a headset for about an hour.
Huh?
Do your eyes feel anything strange after working in a headset for an hour?
Not really. No.
Yeah, we've got people on the team that work 8 hours a day inside a headset. Some people, it does depend on your eyes to some extent, but I think optically they're all meant to be quite comfortable now.
Are they working like fully remote in the VR headset?
Yeah, it's like totally. Yeah, they're in the metaverse.
Yeah. I'll be in my digital office.
Right, but the nice thing again with Modeler is that because you have desktop and it's the same UI, it's like if you don't feel comfortable staying in there for a long time, you can just jump back to desktop, work in desktop for a while, take a break.
Yeah.
Totally fine.
Just a little stamp. Oh, whoops. Gotta make a new layer.
Or asks if you could use it with glasses. You can. Most of the modern headsets will support eye adjustments and IPD adjustments and all sorts of nice things to make it comfortable for everybody. I think contacts might be a little bit easier, but you should be fine with glasses.
I think when Gio was doing his demo yesterday, he was wearing glasses.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's right. Gio wears glasses. So.
I wear screen glasses sometimes, but I usually just take them off when I jump in here.
What kind of job at Adobe requires it? No, some people are just really into VR, so this is like personal projects. No one at Adobe is like slave driving us to be in a headset for 8 hours. It's probably an overstatement, to be honest. Way to go, Mellor!
So, just making little bits of grass popping out of.
Yeah.
That's a little too big. Maybe I'll make a different shape for the mouth.
Character's looking very cute.
Thank you. So we got that, and I want to do like a bamboo, like a couple bamboo stalks sticking out of it.
Okay.
I just lost my train of thought.
Joshua asks how this compares to ZBrush if you've used that software.
I can't do VR in ZBrush.
There you go.
Yeah.
I think on the UI side, obviously we look at ZBrush and all the other tools, to see what everybody has and what's good and all that. And our main focus has been on keeping the experience really intuitive and streamlined and really familiar to people that are coming from 2D especially. We think there's a lot of great 2D metaphors. So rather than sort of coming up with 3D metaphors from 3D tools, if there's an existing one from 2D, we'll try to leverage that. And also try to make the experience more tactile and more like drawing with a stylus, but in 3D. So I think there's a different mindset to developing the UI. So obviously the workflows are totally different, but it really just depends on what's your creative style, I think.
I gotta say that working in VR has really influenced my style. Because I used to do a lot more like hard, like rigid models, and in here I can just be super illustrative, very gestural. I discovered this kind of wispy technique that I developed early on, so now I just kind of go crazy with it.
It's interesting to see kind of in retrospect how much tools sort of subconsciously influence what you make.
Yeah.
Because you don't want to do something that's hard to do. You want to focus on the art.
Can I give a shout out to somebody?
Yeah.
Okay, so I was at an event called Camp MoGraph just last month, and there was a session by Alex Parker. So if she's watching, hey. She was talking about ways to discover your own style, and one of them had to do with just how you navigate around an actual tool. So I thought that was super insightful. I was like, oh yeah, that's all the stuff that I'm doing here is me solving my own way around this program, and that's how I've developed a style around that.
Right. Yeah, no, that's a really good insight. We got about 10 minutes, FYI, to finish up and wrap up.
I'll kick it into high gear then.
I'll answer some of the questions while you're jamming. There's a question about how long it takes to get used to the hand controls by Cersei Mendez?
I got accustomed to this in about a week,
Okay.
but I also had been playing just other games in VR within the last year. But even friends that I've talked to have been able to pick up the VR modeling stuff in about a week or two.
Cool.
Yeah, it's pretty intuitive.
Joshua also asked if there's a rigging module. At the moment, there is no rigging module, but yeah, as you're saying, it could be quite handy for it's an obvious thing to do well in VR because again, it benefits so much from the 3D.
Yeah, you can imagine just like drawing bones inside a character like that. Oh, jeez. Gotta scoot back a bit.
Nope. And asks if there's somewhere you can go virtually to take an MD workshop. Giovanni has actually been doing virtual workshops for a tool called Medium, which joined Adobe a while ago. So we might have to kickstart those back up. It's actually a really good way to learn because you can see people digitally and see their hand motions. It was a cool feature of Medium back in the day. And yeah, there's a lot of tutorials.
So right now I'm just building out these components for the bamboo. And in a way, I'm kind of assembling my own little palette of building blocks that I can turn into links.
Ah, cool. There's the leaf technique again.
Huh?
There's the leaf technique again.
Yeah. The infamous leaf technique.
It's great. Oh yeah, and with the
and then I'll actually add a little bit of detail right here, just by finding that spot. Bam. And doing a little bit more down there. Cool. And then I'll just smooth that out. I'll turn down the resolution a bit, smooth it out some more. That's feeling good. Now turn that into a link. I'll turn this into, these are our links. And now I can start building some bamboo stalks.
cool.
So I'll do that. I'll grab this over here. I'll kind of connect some of these parts right here.
Oh, I think I see where this is going.
I know, right? Yeah. Oh, I need to add a little bit of lightness right here. Oops. I guess I'll do that.
Yay.
Oh, and look, it's applying to everything else thanks to linking.
That didn't look staged at all.
I know, right? That was
great.
actually on accident. All right, so
That's a great demo of it. I think that happens in art like so often, you know?
Yeah.
You just like, oh man, I wish I could just do this one change and
Well, let me tell you about that.
right.
Yeah. All right, so I'll select that, make a link.
It's important for the creativity thing we talked about as well, because sometimes you do, like imagine you did all these bamboo things and you realize, oh man, I want these to be a bit lighter. You know, if that takes you 30 minutes to do, maybe you won't do it. So even though you know, oh, that would look better, you're just like, it's not worth it.
Right.
When you have these tools at your disposal, you're just like, oh, cool, boom, boom, knock that out. And just hopefully makes everything just look better overall.
Yeah. I definitely feel like I can spend more time iterating and refining, or even adding more detail to something, since my production time is a lot shorter with building stuff in here, and being more precise with everything, and just being generally quicker.
Speaking of production time, you've got about 2 minutes.
Awesome. This will be done in 2 minutes. Grab that. Boom.
Your bamboo's awesome. Much love.
Group that. Now I can put that in here. I can do it here. I can even flip around the links like that, so there's a little bit of visual variety.
Cool.
So I got that. And just to finish this all off, let's add my little wisp. And we'll make it just come out of his mouth, I guess. Or we'll just have it wrap around his body.
It's funny to watch you do that on a monitor because I'm like, how is he doing that? Going around it, right? But of course in VR, if you can imagine, it's just like going around a cup or something.
Yeah,
like
exactly.
It's totally natural.
Turn that down. Smooth that.
Burp.
And all right. And let's add some extra. Oh, let's.
Hey.
How am I doing in time?
You
Oh,
got
the last minute.
You got 3 minutes to wrap up. So if you got any final comments or things you want to, any shout outs or or just a bit of coloring.
My final comment is I've had a lot of fun with Modeler. I can't wait to see what gets added to it, and it's revolutionized my personal workflow.
We'll put that on the back of the box.
Yeah, do it. Are they making boxes for this?
You can make a box right now.
True, yeah.
There's a couple of straggler questions. Try to answer as many as I can before our time runs out. In terms of retopology, you can export from Modeler, but yeah, the triangle counts can be quite nutty if you really push it. Modeler, we've had things exported to 8 billion triangles. You can decimate it down to millions.
Yeah.
I mean, you can go heavy with it. And resolution is under your control. Usually you change it based on your export. And there's some feature requests, so we'll note those. And yeah, for Painter and other FBX exports, we're working to make that pipeline really seamless, so that, you know, as you've seen in the keynote, there's a lot of like send to kind of functionality. So we want to make it so you can easily take your models from Modeler into Painter for texturing, to Stager for rendering, or
just hit like stage 1, stage 2, stage 3.
Yeah. And a lot of people we've seen, especially for these kinds of illustrative works where the materials tend to be kind of per layer. You know, you've got like your translucent piece and etc. A lot of those you can even do directly in Stager, because you could just you can just drop substance materials in Stager on pieces. So you don't have, if you're not needing to do like fine grain painting, it's really just Modeler, kick it into Stager, drop your materials on, hit render, and you're done. Yeah,
and I mean the stuff that you can capture now with the Adobe Capture, build materials out of that and just pop them in there.
Pop it in there.
Just make whatever you want.
Cool. Well, thanks so much for the demo. I hope you guys enjoyed it.
Thanks for having me.
Enjoy the rest of the show.
See you guys.